Okay, so one big vice that I think a lot of people suffer from is excessive spending on unnecessary things. And everyone has this vice to some degree. Um, it's quite a common vice, but what people is it takes a lot of different forms depending on your personality and stuff like that. Um, People can waste money in lots of different ways. For some people, it's eating out a lot or spending lots of money on takeaways. For other people, it's like spending money on clothes that they don't need. Some people, it's going out too much, or spending just all their money on going out clubbing when they'd rather be doing something else. It could be spending too much money on coffee, stuff like that. It takes so many different forms, but it's quite a universal thing that people struggle with. And people often say that, like, I need to cut down on like excessive spending, stuff like that. And I used to think, I used to suffer from this a lot, to be honest. And I've recently had a bit of a paradigm shift about spending money that I think really helps with excessive spending. And that's what I'm going to teach you in this video. I used to think the key to saving money, to not spending money excessively, was just willpower. Like every time you got the temptation to spend money, you just had to say no to it. Like every time let's say your trouble is you buy too much coffee, and you're wasting money on that, and you look at your bank account at the end of the week and you just think, oh fuck, all that money's just gone on coffee, and you want to change it. And so every time you walk past a coffee shop, you get an urge to spend money on coffee. And you say, no, I'm not going to. You suppress that urge. Or let's say your big thing is like Uber Eats. You're spending too much money on takeaways. Every time you get home from work, you just force yourself not to get Uber Eats. Just force yourself to cook. And all this stuff is really effective. Like, you do need a bit of willpower. You do need to be prepared to go through a bit of discomfort to make change in your life. But with the paradigm shift I'm going to teach you, you'll find it so much easier and it will make more sense, and you'll just spend money in like a better way anyway, which is what you want. So really what you want to do is just sit down, maybe even with a pad of paper, and just sit there and just ask yourself, like, think about what it is that you're spending money on that you don't want to. So let's say it's takeaways. That's the biggest one, I'd say, probably. Why don't you want to spend money on takeaways? And just really pause and think about that for a second. And it might be different for you, but for me, nothing really comes to mind when I ask these questions, at least when I started doing it. I just pause for a second and it's just like, I don't really know, to be honest. Because you could turn it on its head and say, actually, there's a lot of reasons why you should spend money on takeaways. Well, it's actually like a sensible financial decision. When we really think about it, cooking a meal, it takes up so much time. It's really long to cook. It takes like about an hour when you factor in everything. Chopping up the food, cooking it, washing it up. It takes a lot of time. It's not a bad idea just to outsource that to someone else and save an hour of your time in your busy schedule that you can just spend doing something else. Like fair enough, to be honest. Or take the example of, let's say you spend too much money on coffee. Like, is it such a bad thing to spend money on, really, when you think about it? Like you go into a Pretz, let's say, and you just, you sit in the queue, you hear some nice music, you get like a professionally made coffee, it tastes really nice, coffee's quite good for us, increases your productivity. Is it really such a bad use of your time? It's quite a pleasant experience when you think about it, ordering a coffee. What's wrong with it, in a sense? What's inherently bad about it? Same with, going out, clubbing. Like, why don't you want to be spending money on alcohol, so much? In a sense, I'm making a bit of a caricature with this one, but, in a sense, you're there with friends, maybe you're speaking to some girls, isn't that important part of your life, like your social life, your love life? What is it about this bad habit that you don't want to do? That this bad spending habit that you don't want to do? And it's difficult to really pin it down. But nonetheless, there is something about these habits that instinctively feels like a bit of a waste of money somehow. And that's what it really boils down to. It's just a gut instinct. When you tap your card at a Pret, or when you spend 12 quid on a Uber Eats, there's some part of you that's like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Why did you do that? And it goes beyond kind of rational argument almost. It's a feeling more than anything else. But let's just return to that question for a second. Why don't you want to spend money on this stuff? Can we think of any reason why there would be for that? And having pondered on this question quite a lot, there's only one thing that really comes to mind. There can only be one reason why you don't want to spend money on any of this stuff. And that's because there's something else that you want to spend your money on instead. Because it can only be that. Because money is in and of itself, money doesn't have any value. It only has value in what you spend it on. In a sense, if you had a choice between having £12 in your bank account forever, but you could never spend it, or spending that £12 on an Uber Eats, what would you do? I would say the sensible thing to do in that situation is to spend that money on an Uber Eats, because that's the only thing you can spend it on. If you can't spend it on anything else, you might as well not have it. So what that tells me, if you do the same, is that there's something else that you want to spend the money on that's not the Uber Eats. Okay, so that's progress. Now the next question is what is that thing? And I think you want to be quite proactive about working out what thing you want to spend your money on instead of that stuff. I think it's quite easy for people when they think about what I should be spending my money on, is they think quite long term but quite vaguely. They think I want to spend money on a mortgage, or I want to buy a car at some point or something like that. And I'm not saying don't do any of those things at all. In fact, if that is what you want to spend your money on, this is a great opportunity to really double that down. But I feel like a lot of people say stuff like that, but they don't really use any intention towards that. They don't think very intentionally about it. They just imagine that's that's a sensible thing to spend money on. I want to be sensible with my money, so that's what I'm going to spend my money on. But I actually think, unless you have some really big plan that you're very set on, it's actually not a bad idea to think slightly more in the short term. Think slightly more about what goals you have for your life, and just think about what stuff would get you closer to your goals that you can spend money on. And then basically it's just as simple as, instead of spending money on the stuff that's a waste of money, spend it on that stuff instead. So let's say your goal is to spend, you want to get in better shape. Spend that money on a gym, monthly membership at a gym. Or let's say you want to improve your flexibility, your posture. Spend that money on a yoga class. If you want to get better at business, spend your money on a really good laptop, so you can just work really efficiently and you're not waiting for your laptop to load or something like that. Or if you want to improve your social life or your love life, spend money on social events where you're meeting the kind of people you want to meet. Or spend money on clothes that make you look more presentable, that make people want to talk to you. That's the kind of way you want to break it down and think about it. So to take a personal example for me, I'm very focused at the moment in doing travel vlogging. So I have like another YouTube channel where I do like these kind of like travel vlogging videos basically. And I wanted to sort of upgrade what I was doing with this. So I just spent like £500 on a GoPro, you know, and you do kind of the maths. You think, okay, £500, that's a lot of money, you know. How much is like how many Uber Eats is that? You know, like that's quite a lot, you know. It's about like 50 Uber Eats. But would I rather spend that money on a GoPro, you know, and make really beautiful content for my YouTube channel that's going to get like lots more people watching the videos, and then that's going to lead to, you know, being able to advertise, being able to make money off my craft, you know, and like in a sense it will pay itself back, you know. Or do I want to spend money on an Uber Eats? And to be honest, it's like, yeah, actually a GoPro's a better decision there. Boom, done. But you see what I mean? Now we're getting somewhere. Now there's some reason behind why you're not spending money on, like, there's some intention behind your spending, you know. And I'm quite sort of ruthless with my spending. Because one thing that I've realised is if you really have to, if you really go like totally broke, like you can usually just about make it. Like, obviously there's some circumstances that I'm not accounting for, you know. But like I remember with my last job where I was making like literally it was like a sales job and it was like 100% commission. So if you didn't make any sales, you just didn't get paid basically. And there were some tough weeks where I was making like £100-200 a week, you know. And I just made it work. Like I just found a way to just eat really cheaply. Like I just went to Aldi and just bought like lots of chicken and just chucked it in the freezer. I was like, that'll just last me for this week. I was paid on a weekly basis, so it kind of works. And you know, I just about did it. And you know, that's an extreme example, but my point is that don't be afraid to like spend money on stuff that you want to spend money on, that is genuinely good to spend money on, because you'll just work it out. You know, if you have like £200 left to the end of the month, you'll find a way. You just won't make those unnecessary payments now. You know, like if you spent, I'll take my example. You know, if I spent £500 on a GoPro, do you really think I'm so tempted to go and then waste some money on like a coffee that I don't need, or an Uber Eats that I don't need? You know, no, probably not. Probably all of a sudden I'm going to be like, oh, actually I need to save that money. So that's quite a clever trick you can play on yourself. But yeah, just to conclude, guys, really what you want to just work out is like, what do you actually want to spend your money on, and just spend it on that instead. And there's a lot of work you need to do. You need to focus on goals. You know, most people, like 90% of people like that I speak to, they just don't have a fucking clue what they're doing with their life. Like, they have no goals, they have no intention behind what they're doing, and you know, it's a sorry way to live. Like, I do feel for people like that. Like, I think they should change. But the point I'm getting at is, until you have like some intention behind what you're doing in life and thinking like, what do I actually want to do with this money that I have, you know, that I've earned, you know, like if you got a job, you know, presumably you think, you know, you deserve the money you're earning, you know, you've gone to work to get it, so, you know, you should spend it on something. Just what is that? Yeah, I think part of it is kind of switching from like a scarcity mindset to like an abundance mentality. You know, like I do think, especially in the UK, I do think there's quite a scarcity mindset. You know, we're very critical of earning big amounts of money in the UK, and the idea of excessive spending on anything is like seen as a bit kind of, ooh, yeah, that's a lot of money. But at the end of the day, like, you got to spend that money on something, you know. And the only problem is it a wise use of the money or not? That's really what it boils down to. You know, I just got back from a trip in Cornwall where I took this GoPro and like filmed a bunch of content there. You know, that cost me like, you know, I don't know, like £500, £300, like when you factor in like hotels, travel, food, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, for that whole trip with the GoPro included, I spent like £1,000. You know, it's a lot of money. It's reckless, but what, you know, I was gonna spend that money. If I didn't spend it on that, like what was I gonna spend it on? You know, realistically, was it gonna sit in my account? You know, was it gonna sit in my bank account, that £1,000, or would someone say to me, "Oh, Alfie, do you want to come to the pub?" And I'd spend 600, you know, 60 quid. Well, maybe 60 quid's quite a lot, but I'd spend like, you know, 30 quid on a bunch of drinks at the pub, or you know, someone would say, "Oh, do you want to get a takeaway?" And I'd waste money on a takeaway. You know, and it would just be kind of death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. You know, money just trickles out your account if you don't have like an intention behind it. So that's really what I would advise, is have intention about what you're spending on. And you can save. You know, I do think like this is something that I've been starting to think about doing, is just like save a bunch of money. Like you can do that. I do think that's a good use of money, but like have a reason why you're saving it. Don't just save it without intention. You know, like, are you saving that money because you want to like move out of your parents' house? You want a bit more freedom. Are you saving that money because there's something you want to buy? You know, like you want to, I don't know, you want to. I mean, to use my example, let's say I want to go to some country that's quite far away, got to get expensive flights. Yeah, I've got to save up money for that flight, you know. Or, you know, like there are all kinds of reasons, but you want to have some framework as to why you're saving it, you know. So that's what I say, guys, basically. And yeah, it's as simple as that. And yeah, thanks for watching. As always, top link in the description. We're doing some one-on-one coaching at the moment. It'd be great for you to join us. So yeah, just book a free session on there. It'd be a pleasure to hear from you. And I'll see you in the next video.